Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. I'm broadcasting live from Chesapeake, Virginia, and out there to YouTube and Facebook. And after the broadcast, I'll have the replay on my Facebook and on YouTube and on my website, which you can go and take a look at. And I'll be publicizing that so that everyone can take a look at the replay if you don't see it here live. I'm on the studio today with my wife, Gloria.
Hello.
Okay, and I'm broadcasting to all the ones watching here in the United States, USA, and also everywhere else in the world that's watching. This broadcast goes around the world, and I'm really anxious to hear from you. Give me some likes and subscribe to my YouTube and to my Facebook channel, and keep me abreast of where you are and what you think about the program. I'd love to hear from you and hear some questions and comments. Today I'm going to show a little bit of skyscaping and painting clouds. And I've got a lot to show you today, so I want you to stick around and watch what happens. I'm going to do, actually I got two things going on. I'm going to show you a small demonstration I did on Plein Air, just a quickie. And there was some problems with that. I'm going to go over those problems and show you the solutions to that problem. And then I'm going to go through a step-by-step planning and actually do a final painting on another section with the same layout, but also with a different formation, a different composition. And I'll show you how I did that. So when we're finished, you should understand how I make clouds and give you some incentive or inspiration on trying your own. So the reason I like clouds is, number one, they help the landscape sometimes, especially depends on how much sky space you have. It also gives you interesting shapes, and it also can enhance and add to the landscape itself to give it more interest. And I'll show you a little bit example of why I mean that. I've got a on the main here. Let me show you a little intro here, a real quick little video. So those are clouds, and that was a picture of a video I took here locally, very close by, about a mile and a half away from here. And the clouds were really up there, and it was really beautiful. And so I captured a little film clip, and I thought I'd show that to you. So that's kind of an inspirational way of looking at the sky, and also to try. I think the most fascinating things about clouds is that they're always changing. They're always changing in size. They're moving sometimes with the winds blowing them. And they're hard to capture sometimes unless you take photographs. And that's why I took photographs of that, just so I could take a look at it. And then to paint them is also another thing. So they're a very fascinating subject, and it's something that is available in the sky when it's there. Sometimes it isn't. So I'm going to take you to my plein air. I have a plein air painting that I did. And this plein air painting I did, let me go through that. Now, it's a short one, it's about a couple minutes long, but it'll give you a little idea of what I did on location. There were no clouds that day. That was the problem. So I went out to paint clouds, and there was no clouds. But I did capture the landscape scene, and then I'll tell you what I did with that. So and I'll bring you back, and we'll discuss that when we come back after the video. Okay, this is a scene I was looking at during my plein air exposition out here, a local area near here. But notice there's no clouds in the sky. But I was trying to capture the landscape, and so I started with a low horizon. I'm going to use the bottom third to capture the landscape elements in the bottom third of the painting, because 2/3 of the painting is going to be sky. And in this case, I don't have any clouds to look at, so it's really going to be really experimental. So here I'm finishing off the landscape portion, the background trees behind that middle ground row of trees, and the roadway that's looking right at me. So I'm finishing off the touches here for the middle ground. Then I mix up some my Cobalt and Ultramarine blue, and I start painting in the sky. And as I'm going along, I'm really, in my own mind, I'm trying to envision clouds in the sky without any there. So I'm coming up with shapes that could be an example of what could be. So I start with the larger clouds at the top, which is typical, because they're closer to me. The larger clouds would be at the top of the painting. And again, I'm just trying to capture a shape here. I'm not, this is something out of my imagination. And then continuing on, you can see the rest of the sky. I just put in the clouds. And this is stuff I'm going to discuss here after the video. Now that was a plein air I did about a week ago, last weekend. And I went out to paint clouds in the sky, and there were no clouds there. So I went ahead and painted the landscape anyway. And then I started painting the clouds up there on the fly. I mean, I just started putting shapes up there in the clouds and so forth. And that's a real problem. If you don't have a good reference or a good idea of what you want to put in the sky, that'll make the landscape a little bit struggling. So let me take you over to my painting table, and I got some solutions to that. So I'm going to take you over to my painting table. Okay, so this was the plein air painting that I did on location. And of course, the first problem with it was I really didn't have a good plan for the clouds. I just started putting cloud shapes up there in the sky because I had all this space up there. So that was the first thing, is have a good plan before you start painting the sky. So what I'm going to do now, let me show you what I could do with it. I took this sketch, this plein air sketch, which I did on location, and I did a photocopy of it on my printer in black and white. And so now also I went on the internet and was looking for pictures, and I found this in one of my old art books where I have the same sort of landscape, a low profile here of the landscape and a cloud coming across this way. So this is a better plan now. I have something like this, a photograph or a sketch or something that you like the sky, but now you're trying to find a landscape to put it on. So what I did now, I can see I've got almost a shape here started on this. So step 2, once I found a good clouds formation that would fit this landscape, fit the landscape from the start, then I went ahead with I just took watercolors and I started blocking in the cloud formation. This is the cloud, which is dark in there with a little white on the edge, with a little bit of blue sky in the background. And I started putting that into this landscape. So that's the result of just doing a little research on a cloud shape, a better plan for the cloud, and then to take that shape and implement it on your actual landscape layout, which is a much better solution than trying to wing it as you on the fly as you're on location. Have some kind of a plan in mind. Put that aside. So one of the planning steps now that takes care of the plein air. I was going to go through the plein air painting and show you a problem with it, which was a lack of planning in the sky, and then show you one of my solutions to it is to find a good sky plan and then implement that. So the next planning step I have for clouds is practice painting the cloud. Now here's a cloud. Here's the one from that little clip I had in the beginning. That's a nice cloud. This cloud is backlit. The sun is behind the cloud, so you have a dark shadow here in the foreground, a forward part of the cloud. And you have a white edge around it. So you know this has been backlit from the sky. So how do you paint that? Well, number one, last week I talked about wet on wet techniques, and this is an application of that, where I wet the paper with water, and then I mix my paints and I paint the cloud shape in there of the shadow, and you can notice the soft edges. It's wet on wet. So I had a wet background with just water, And then I took the mixture of the cloud, the dark cloud color, and painted that on top of the water. And I let the water do its own thing. In this case, soft edges around the cloud itself. Then I dried that, completely dried it. Then I mixed up my sky color, which was a little bit of ultramarine, a little bit of cobalt blue. And then I painted it wet on dry, the dry paper, and I painted a wet paint around the edges. And you can see I have hard edges here now. I have hard edges around the cloud. So that's the first two steps of painting a cloud, is to get the shape of the cloud, paint the shadow first, let it dry, or dry it with a hair dryer or whatever, then go back and put in the outside edges. Now the next step would be to go in with another brush and soften up some of the edges to clean it up. But right now that's really how you would prepare a cloud. So that's kind of the technique I'm going to use today on the painting that I'm going to do. So this is the practice you want to do. Number one, get a good reference, a good picture. This is an actual photograph that I took from that video that I took nearby. And then practice the technique of wet on wet and then wet on dry to get you the right shape of the cloud. Okay, and it'll be different every time you do it. It's not going to ever be the same, but it'll give you a good practice. So the tip for today is to have a good reference for a cloud, and then practice working wet and wet and wet and dry. That's a tip for today, and you're going to see me do that on application now with it. Let me go through my next planning step. So this is the landscape that I was doing the plein air from. This is a photograph of it. I'll give you a nice close up. Okay, that's the photograph of what I was painting, and you notice the sky was very bare. There was no clouds at all. In fact, cirrus clouds is about all I could do, and I wasn't going to play with that, so I wanted some clouds. I did add a little building down here in the bottom. There was a building over here to the left, so I moved it here and put the building here on the horizon line. Okay, and I have a road coming in and a tree line. Okay, very simple landscape, but I wanted to have a nice big sky area to put the cloud in. Okay, what did I do next? Well, I went and found a picture. I found another picture which I liked in one of my art books, a long art book, reference book. And this was the photograph I would use. And again, I wanted to find a skyscape which had a low landscape ground with a lot of clouds up here in the sky. So that was more the format I needed, was a large cloud space in the sky area. You can see the shadow patterns and the white clouds around it. Okay, then I can combine these two. I took these two photographs, this one and this one, and I combined it for my final composition. There's the cloud. Here's my landscape down here at the bottom. Now I'm going to show you something here that I use. I use Photoshop. So I'm going to take you over here and show you my little Photoshop area. It'll be a very quick demonstration here. Get the right one now. Okay, now this is my let me go back and take these off. Okay, so that's the photograph that I have to begin with. This is my landscape picture. I added a little building over here. I did that with Photoshop also. Just cut and paste that one in there. And then on top of this, I added the cloud on top of that painting, and then I combined it for composition wise. I just changed the size of this, and I moved it on top. So there's the original photograph here at the bottom. Here's the second photograph on top. And then I printed this off for my reference with the skyscape with the cloud shape and formation and the landscape at the bottom. So by using Photoshop, I was able to come up with my composition. So let me take you back now to my my close-up camera, which will take you back to the okay. Okay. So I took that photograph composition. I made my drawing. I always do a drawing on my drawing pad. And then from that, I added the shape of the cloud to my drawing. So this is the final composition I did from the two photographs, the one from the landscape photograph and the one from the sky photograph. Okay. So I took this photograph, then I transferred it to my watercolor paper. Okay. All right, now so my planning now, I've gone ahead and gotten a better composition from a photograph, and I did my drawing. I'm ready to go. Now let's talk about my material now. I've got my Holbein paints laid out here, and I have up here for the sky. I'm going to use ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. So there's my ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson's over here. I'll mix those together along with Payne's gray back here in the corner. So those will be my sky color mix right there. And then for the cloud, that'll be for the dark cloud. Then over here I have cobalt blue and cerulean blue. And down the corner I have lemon yellow and green number 1. They'll be for the trees and for the grass. Okay. So there's my blues, my red, my gray, my sky color, cobalt and cerulean. My grass and trees will be lemon yellow and green number 1. I'm working on Gemini 140-pound watercolor paper. These are Holbein artist watercolor quality paints. I'm using Holbein brushes, and I'm using a palette in a bottle. The palette in a bottle fine mist sprayer with a black top. I'm going to use that to keep the moisture on the paper. And all these materials are available at Everett's Watercolors, www.everettswatercolors.com. Okay. All right, now the brushes I'm using, this is a 1-inch flat from Holbein, a 1-inch synthetic fat brush. This is a silver brush from Silver Brush. It's a quill, number 40 quill. And then I have a large number 16 round Holbein synthetic. It's really a blend. And then I have a half-inch Holbein flat, and a number 8 round Holbein watercolor brush. Those are all synthetic. The only one that's natural hair is the quill. Okay, so I'm going to start out here with the paint. Let me mix the colors up first. I'm going to use the quill brush to put my paint on. So I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to mix up the gray. It's a dark gray, but I'm going to start with the lighter value first. So ultramarine blue and a little bit of alizarin crimson will give me a purple, and then I'll put the Payne's gray in there. It'll give me a light gray. So it's going to have a purplish color, but I'm going to tone it down, gray it down with the Payne's gray. Then I'm going to lighten it up with a lot of water. And I always have my test sheet over ready because I want to test out the value. So before I put it down on the paper, the color and the value. I'm going to gray it down just a little bit more. A little more Payne's gray in there. And move my brushes aside, get them out of the way. Okay. All right. So I got my color mix there for the light value. So what I'm going to do now is wet the paper. So I'm going to use the 1-inch flat Holbein with just clean water. And I'm going to go in. I'm going to paint in the shadow color of the cloud. So I'm waiting. I'm painting the interior now of the cloud shape with water. With water. And I can look at it as I look at it closely. I can see from the shine where the water is. That's about the only way. Unless you put a little tint on that. Sometimes uh, you can put just a really light coloring on your water so you can find the edges. But I'm just going to use the plain water, and I can see the shine from the light reflecting off of it. I can see the shine. So wet. I'm going to wet this whole area, and I'm going to make shadow. I'll go back over it again, make sure I got it all covered. I don't want it too wet. I don't want it sopping wet, but I want it damp. I want the paper damp so that the paint will give me a soft edge. I want a soft edge on the cloud shape. Let's see. Okay. All right, so I got the that part of the cloud. Now I'll pick up the paint with my quill, and I'm going to go in now with the light value. And this brush is pretty wet, so uh, the paint's going to spread pretty quickly. And you can control a little bit of the edges here, but I want a soft edge. I want a soft edge. If you get some hard edges, you can always go back and we can always modify that a little bit. But right now, uh, and then some of this can be lighter or a little bit darker in some places, so it's not really uh, important that it be exactly equally distributed everywhere. Just make sure you get enough paint on the paper to give you a nice light color. And I put a little more paint on my brush because that way I get a little variation in the shadows because cloud's not always exactly the same everywhere. It's got little dimples or little impressions in it. And I'll go back and soften some of these edges. I'll show you this with a damp brush. We can soften these edges up. So this doesn't take a lot of time, but this is the first step you want to get started. This is the area that to get the cloud started. Then I'll let this dry, and I'll work. There's still a couple more clouds I want to put in. It puddled up. See the water puddled up a little bit here. That's okay. I just pick up the extra moisture here with the brush and just move it around. Okay, now there's a couple of areas I want to put water stuff on. Um, there's another low lying cloud down here at the bottom, so I'm gonna put a little bit of water down here, just a little bit. This is a smaller cloud. The larger clouds are at the top of your painting because they're closer to you, and as you go further off in the horizon, the perspective will make the clouds are a lot smaller, and because they're further away. So they should have a little bit different size, and they'll be a little bit lighter. So a little more water in the brush. These are the faraway clouds, way off, way behind the trees back here. Remember, I'm looking at this, and as I paint this scene, there's all kinds of variables. I mean, you can make changes here later on, but at least get uh, the starting points, get the light values down, then we'll go back in, we'll add in some dark values, and then the painting will start working together. You got to start with a base. You got to start with a base color, and then go from there. Okay, I take this wet brush. Re-wet this area just a little bit over here, just a little bit. Put in some more shadow over here. And there's a little cloud up here in the corner. It's not that important, but just to have a little interest up there, just a little shadow. Okay. All right. Okay, now we're gonna let this dry. Now before I let it dry, no, before I let it dry, I'm gonna mix up a little darker paint because it's still damp and I can still work with that. So take add a little bit more Payne's gray, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and a touch of Alizarin crimson. And I want to test that color. I want to test that color now next to that. It's a little bit darker. So this I'll put a little bit darker mix on there. So what I'm going to do now is just put a little bit of darker shadows in here. Just a little darker shadows. Not everywhere, but just certain parts of the cloud. I'm adding a little bit of darker value. I'm going to put just a touch down here, very little down here at the bottom here. These are very small clouds. They still have a little shape to them, they'll have a little shadow to them. We'll put a little bit. Now this is wet paint, so it's going to dry a lot. It's going to dry a lot lighter. And last but not least, let's not leave this little guy out up here. We'll put a little darker shadow in him. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to dry the painting. So I'll turn on the dryer. As I'm going along, I'll talk about it now. What I've done is I've put in the light mixture of gray, which was a Lutheran crimson mixed in with ultramarine, a little bit of Payne's gray. And then I add a darker mixture by adding a little bit of the ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson. To give me a darker mix, and I put that on top of that lighter mix, so I have a little variation in the cloud. Because the cloud has a little bit of dimension to it, it has a little bit of thicknesses, it has more moisture and so forth. So the differences in the density of the cloud will give you a difference in the color. Remember, that's a shadow, so the bigger the cloud is, the darker it's going to be, and also the source of light will also be a factor. So I want to make this completely dry because I'm going to put a wet wash around it in the sky. So I want this to be completely dry. And just like I showed with the practice painting, when first of all, I put the shadow pattern in, let it dry, and then I went back and put the wet on dry around it in the sky. So that's the combination I'm going to do today. I will test here with the back of my hand. It feels pretty dry. I think we're done. Okay, I'll put it dryer. Okay, now we're going to mix up. Before I do that, though, I'll go and show you a couple, just a technique now. I'm not going to do this everywhere, but in certain places, we'll do this. I'm taking a 1/2 inch flat brush, making sure it's wet, not real wet, but so I put it, make sure it's damp. Then I take out the excess water, and then I can go in here and I can tickle. I tickle the edges here. All I do is rub it against the edge, and that softens up. That softens up that edge, so it gets a soft edge. Okay. So that if the cloud did dry hard on you, hard edge, then you can still go in there with a damp brush, very damp, very little water, and go and tickle the edge. Just tickle the edge, and that'll soften up that edge real nicely. Okay, and you can do that all the way around. But I just want to show you the technique there of doing that to make the cloud look a little bit more realistic. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and mix up the my blue, my sky color. That's the next color I'm going to put in. So I'm going to use a little bit of cobalt blue. And this is going to be a wet on dry technique. I'm going to use the wet paint in the brush. So there's cobalt blue, and then a little further down, that'll be in the top of the sky. Then a little further down, I use a lighter blue, which is cerulean, my cerulean blue, which is a nice sky color. And really, you have a mixture of the two. So it just start with a cobalt blue and then move down to the cerulean blue with more water in it, make it light. The plein air painting I did, the one I showed you a demonstration on in the videotape I did, I used the ultramarine blue, which is a little bit dark, and I didn't want the sky that dark, but that's what happened. Okay, that's how you learn. You practice, you get it out there, and you do it. All right, so I'm going to start up here. I'm going to start putting in the blue sky. So I'm going to go in here and go around this cloud. I'm going to leave the white, a little bit of white edge up here. So I'm starting with the cobalt blue, which is a little darker at the top. So I made this color a little bit lighter than what I did in the plein air because it was just a little bit too dark, a little bit too light, too dark on that particular landscape. So there's white edge now. This is where the backlit cloud uh, is showing through with the sun behind. The sunlight, the light is behind the cloud or part of it. Sometimes the cloud is all white because part of the cloud is part of the sun is in front of the cloud. But that part that where the sun is behind the cloud is going to have a dark shadow. So you just have to have a good reference, a good photo, and then you try to emulate that. You try to emulate that, and it takes practice. You have to practice uh, painting the edges, painting the what you see. Up here, I'm going to put some more blue. So I'm going up here and work around this top of this area up here. And I'm trying to make the edges all dark. I don't want to do a rim. I don't want to have a halo around the cloud shape, but I do want to have variable edges. Some parts will be a little bit close, and some parts will be a little thicker. as far as the edge of the white cloud. But that's the edge that the sunlight is hitting behind the cloud, the white edge. And I think that's what makes the clouds really, to me, interesting, is to get that beautiful silver lining or that white edge that you can get on a cloud in certain lighting conditions. Sometimes at sunsets, you get a beautiful edge on the cloud with the sun behind the cloud. The colors, of course, will be more of a sunset colors, more orange and more reds and yellows. But here we have one that was done in this cloud was taken early part of the morning, so the sun was very bright. So you had a lot of white showing on the cloud. Now here I changed my design just a little bit to speed it up a little bit. Okay, then I'm going to come around here, and I'm going to pick up more of that. I'm going to pick up more cerulean blue now to make it a little bit lighter. Now I can see where the paint's getting a little bit dry, so I'll use my spray bottle to keep that area wet. So I re-wet that area with a little bit of spray. So now it'll spread out. You see that? The gradual, and the blue is going to have some variation in it too. It doesn't have to be a solid blue. It's going to have variations in it, darks and lights. Yeah, the spray bottle I use is my palette in the bottle, Fine Mist Sprayer, which is on my usable, which is found on my website, and I use that a lot in a lot of my paintings. I used it last week on painting the meadow flowers, and there I was doing a landscape with soft edges and hard edges. I think that would also be a good one to look at. The one I did last week was the meadow flowers, along with this one, which as a cloud shows you a lot bit of wet on wet technique. Okay, now I take that cerulean blue, and I'm going to go through here. Let's see. Change this up just a little bit. Now I don't want to make you don't want to make those edges too even. You want to give a little regular shapes to them because it's part of the shape of the cloud and also how the light's hitting it. So you don't want to have a round edge. You want to break that up a little bit and make it a little irregular. So I'm going to come on down here and finish this off here with just a little quick wash. Put some blue behind this. There's a large tree over here. I'll put some blue sky behind it. There's light blue. A lot of blue sky. Of course, that plein air that I was doing was all blue sky. You could see how much blue was out there. It was all blue, very little sky. It was a little bit of fluffy clouds way up in the top, but 99% of that landscape was all blue sky. And that's the easiest. That's the easiest sky to paint. You just paint one color with a graded wash because even the sky blue changes. It goes from dark to light as you move down from top to bottom. So you can make a blue sky interesting if you change the color and the value as you come down. But the clouds give you a little more interesting character. It gives you a little more, well, it gives you a little texture in the sky. I use that's another good rule of thumb. If I have texture on the landscape, which is trees and bushes and rocks and things like that, then you want texture in the sky, which is clouds. If you had a smooth surface, maybe a pond or something, or just a calm pond with no wind blowing or anything, then you might want to have a smooth sky, which works. Okay, now down here in the bottom, I'm going to rough in uh, some tree lines. So I'm going to take a little bit of this green number one, a little bit of yellow, lemon yellow. Then I'm just going to put in some green here. That's a little bit. I'll mix a little bit of cobalt with that. Yeah, I'm using the Holbein round brush number 16 round, which comes to a nice fine point. So it's good for a lot of design work here, both for coverage and for detail. So right now I'm just kind of putting in these tree shapes. Then I'll take a little bit of yellow and put that in there. So here I'm putting a color over top of color. Let the color mix on the paper, just like that. And over here I want to have another small, this is a small tree here, a bush, it's a small bush. And the one right next to it, which is going to be a different value, but right now I'll stick it in there. Okay, then there's one large tree over here on the side, so I'm just going to go ahead and put some color in. Again, this is like putting in a base coat. It's like putting in a first coat, uh, blocking in some color. You're always going to go back in and add some color on top of that later. So the first layer is not always the final color in some cases. You just get a base coat down. You can always go back in later on a second wash and add in another color. So we're coming along here with the landscape now. We're getting this thing down to the trees in the foreground here. Because I pretty well, uh, other than fine tuning some of the edges on the clouds, I'm pretty well finished with the sky at this point. You can always fine tune everything. It doesn't. Now what I want to do is now here in the foreground, I'm going to take a tissue. I do this a lot in some of my paintings. Take this, and I'm going to this value here. I just took a tissue. I'm going to lighten it up slightly. Take a little bit of the paint off. It's still wet. Just take a little bit of moisture, just take a little bit of the pigment off to make it a little bit lighter because I'm going to do it with a darker background behind that. So I'm going to mix up now. I'm going to mix up that dark green, which is green number one with a lot of with ultramarine now. And I can put a little bit of lemon yellow in there, a little bit. Now I'll go back in here now with a darker green behind because these trees are further back, but they're also a lot of shadow. Because we got a big cloud up there. Big cloud is casting a shadow on the landscape, so there'll be some shadows here showing up from that big cloud. So a lot of these trees will be in shadow. and I want to be able to show off the foreground or the forward row of trees, make them lighter value, because some of the light's coming through hitting those. So it just, you make up your story here about what's going on. But the light in the sky is playing with the landscape and casting shadows and changing colors, making things lighter, making things darker. I'll bring this on down. Trying to get the edges on trees. The most important thing about putting a tree line in is getting a good looking edge. Irregular. You don't want to have anything repetitive. Not too much repetition, but a lot of tree looking strokes, which are. See, I want to put that one. Put this tree. I'm going to put this trees over here a little bit taller over here on this side, and a little bit darker. Okay. Oh, moving right along here. Again, this is a lot of repetition work here, but in order to finish off the painting, and I'll get this to a certain point, and then I'll stop because it's just all going to be the same at one point here. But right now I'm just putting in the colors, a dark behind light to show off the different levels of the landscape. You got a dark level here, a dark edge, a dark layer here, which is dark trees, and you got a light layer, which is forward of that, of light green. So it's just light in front of dark. And that's how you separate the elements by value, lights against the darks. In this case, I got the light in front of the dark. I'm gonna take that small brush. I got this number 8 round from Holbein. Now I'm gonna put a little bit of yellow and touch of red in there. I'm gonna make it a little bit orangey looking. Yeah. Okay. I'll put a little Alizarin crimson mixed in with that lemon yellow, and I'm gonna go ahead and put in a little orangey part of the building here. Some kind of bricks, light bricks or something. Okay. Put that in. Let that dry. And let me continue on with these trees. I got these trees back here. Trying to finish them up a little bit. Let's go behind here. So now I'm going to go around this little building here. I'm going to leave that alone for just a second here while I get the rest of the trees in. I'm trying to finish off the major portions here. Okay, now the one area that's probably going to be the lightest area, and I'm always have an impact area or an area that is brighter and I guess more defined than anything else. I'm going to put a patch of light color. I'm going to use this green number 1. Just nice bright green, mix it with a little bit of yellow, make it a nice bright. And that's going to be there's a layer of green back here. It's a vegetation, far off vegetation. It's a field. It's a cultivated field. And it continues on over here behind this lower bushes, and it goes right off in front of this building here. Okay. think I'll bring these down just a little bit more. Just a little touch. And then I'll take the lighter value, lighter green value, and go up and fill in that white area. And leave some white showing. It's okay. There'll be a little bit of glow from the sunlight hitting the top of the trees. It's okay. And over here, I want to put a little shadow. Little shadow on this tree. Okay. And the other thing I want to do is let's put in the roadway. The roadway is interesting. I'm going to use Payne's gray. I could mix up a brown and a blue to give me a gray, but I'll use Payne's gray. I tested on my test sheet. That's good. That's good value. And I'm going to use a little dry brush here. I'll use the 1/2 inch flat brush, and I'm going to lay it flatter. And I'm going to drag that forward from back. Bring it forward. A little dry brush. This is an old asphalt road, which is leading back into the landscape. Pick it up a little bit with the, pick up some of the darks with a little bit with the tissue. Rough texture. Okay. Now the vegetation, there's some yellow green number 1, and a lot of yellow in it. Yeah, this was tall yellow green mix along the edge of the road. I'm picking up colors off my palette to give me a variety. Don't want it all to be the same. As long as it's a light color, it's a light green with yellowy mix with a little bit of gray mix into it. Same thing on this side. Yeah, light yellow grass. Yeah, there's one edge in here that's kind of like a middle green. It's these are vegetables also. They could be it could be lima beans or some kind of string beans, but it's a mixture of light green or middle green. There's a lot of greens in this painting. And I'm gonna pick up a little darker color, say a little bit of ultramarine, and kind of put that in there. That's vegetation. That's low plants. A little bit of shadow along the edge of the trees there. This is a tree line, which will have small trees, large trees, so break up the shapes here into different shapes. Some large, some small, some short, some tall. We're putting a little bit of definition in there just to break up that little area there. And the same thing over here. Put that middle green. There's again, there's a more vegetation over here. This is these are, I guess they're string beans. It's a low-lying plant. They look like beans to me from the road. I lived on a farm for a long time, so I know I've seen lots of bean fields. So these look like a bean field. And there's one strip of gray, a light gray. It's the continuation of this asphalt. This asphalt is here, and it goes around the corners. The road comes in behind these row of trees. So there's asphalt right here, right next to this row of green. So that'll break that up just a little bit. And it goes over here also. Okay, now I'm going to finish off the house. And I'm going to put a little red top on it. I'm going to use Alizarin crimson, which is not really a dark. It's kind of a dark red, but it'll set off that the gold and yellow I put down. So I put down a little red top on this farmhouse. It is a farmhouse. It's a big farm with 2 stories, so it's a big house. And to finish it off, I'm going to take a little bit of the dark ultramarine on the brush, and I'm going to put in some windows. There was a lot of windows up here. It's a big house. I'm going to put some windows, little dashes, dots and dash. Okay. Yeah. And to go around the outside, just to finish it off, clean it up a little bit. Take out that white paper. Okay, that's my skyscape. Now, some improvements I would do is I would go around with a small brush, wet, just a damp brush. I could take this number 8 round and go around here and I can soften up some of these edges. Some of the shadow edges, and then I can even go out here and also soften some of the sky and the white edges. So there's a lot of things you can do here with this painting to go out and improve on it. See here. I think what I'll do on here. A light blue goes across. I'll put a light blue across here. I finished the sky off underneath here, just above the treetops. So bring that across here. There. Okay. All right. So there's your skyscape. I have the Skyscape Clouds, which is a large cloud mass. So what I want to do is I want to show you one I did earlier. I took a little more time on, but let me mask this one off first. I'll put the mat around it. Let's put the mat around this one. Bring this up on the side here. Put the mat around it. Okay. Straighten up a little bit. Okay. Clouds could be a little bit darker shadow on the bottom, and some of the edges could be soften up a little bit on the clouds, and go back and work on the tree line just slightly. But other than that, it's a good first start. So let me show you one I did earlier. This is one I did. It's a little bit different. The sky is a little bit darker. That's why I chose a lighter color today, because that. Now this is one I did earlier. Okay. And I'm not comparing the two, but just to show you, I took a little more time with this one. Again, I think the shadow on the cloud could be a little darker, just along the bottom here. And but the tree line came in okay. There's a nice shadow pattern along here. There's a little house on the corner. So everything was the same I painted in the demonstration. But another look. Okay, let's go back to my main camera. Up all over the place here. Main camera. And bring me on. Hi. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I had I had some technical things today. I had to move some things around. I had screens going on. I have 4 or 5 different screens and different pictures of different things. But I wanted to show you kind of a complete picture of some of the planning steps that you can do to put into a painting. And the better you plan, the more you look at things, the better off the results are. Especially when I went to Plein Air, I think I realized when I came back, I said, wow, I really need a sky. I really need some clouds. But I've gone out there the following day and looked for clouds. So every time I go out, I always look for a cloud formation. And I've taken lots of pictures. I mean, I must have thousands of pictures of different skies. And you can use one of those in some of your paintings. That's the best way to do it. So those of you who have been watching in, and also share with your friends, let them know where I am. And I'll be sharing a video. This will be on my, let me put my links up here on my main camera. I've got, okay, there's the main links there. There's the top number there. The top one there is my website, everettswatercolors.com. Then I have my live broadcast will be on my website page, everettswatercolors.com/classes. And there's a link to that. There's a link to the live broadcast. That'll be live tomorrow. Be a replay. I got to go in and I'll be. YouTube has a copy of that. I'll have to edit it down and put it on there. But it'll be out there by tomorrow morning. You can see a repeat or replay of it on that particular website, on my website. And there's my Fun with Watercolors page. If you do any paintings on my channel, if you want to do a painting and practice one, it's fun. Just do it. I usually have a downloadable copy. I can have a picture of what I used here today and a downloadable sketch. I can put that in my website. And there's a link to my website right there. I have a Fun with Watercolors page, and that will take you to the link that will give you the copy of a photograph I used, and also a copy of a design drawing. And you can use those to help you get started. And then if you want to post it and share it with me and others, then you can put it in my Everett's Watercolors art group, which is on Facebook. And there's the link there to my Everett's Watercolors art group, which is on Facebook. So there's several places there that we can share and communicate with, and sharing with your friends. Let them know what I'm doing, and have them come back. I'll be here next Thursday at 2 o'clock. So right now, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And so I'll see you then.